In the last video, we generated our brand new project. I'm now going to change into that directory that was created. I'm going to start up my code editor inside there. And then we're also going to install a couple of additional dependencies inside of our project right now, rather than having to come back and install these dependencies later on. So inside of my blog project directory, I'm going to do an npm install -- save. And we're going to get Redux, React Redux, Axios, and then one other new dependency that we're going to talk about quite a bit inside this application called Redux-Thunk, like so. So Redux-Thunk, that's the new one. Okay, so I'm going to run this, and while that's installing, let's have a quick reminder about what all these dependencies do, including this new one called Redux-Thunk. All right, so first off, Redux, yep, you know what that is. We've seen good examples of that already. It's the actual Redux library itself. Next up, React Redux. We just worked on an application that made use of this library. Remember, this is the integration layer between the React and Redux libraries, because they were not originally designed to work with each other right out of the box. We've made use of Axios before. Remember, we make use of Axios anytime that we want to make network requests. Axios is not strictly required inside of these React projects. We could technically use that fetch API or the fetch function, but remember we had said that there's a lot of kind of manual hand-holding that you have to do with the fetch function, and so it's usually just a lot easier to make use of Axios. And then finally, this new dependency called Redux-Thunk. Now this is a dependency that we refer to as a middleware. The term middleware applies to the Redux library. Middleware are essentially functions that are going to slightly change the behavior of our Redux store. So they will add in new capabilities or new features to the Redux side of your application. In the case of Redux-Thunk, this is a middleware that is going to help us make network requests from the Redux side of our app. In the vast majority of Redux applications you are ever going to work on, you are going to make use of a middleware like Redux-Thunk. Maybe not exactly Redux-Thunk, but something very much like it. Redux-Thunk is extremely popular, and there's only a handful of other alternatives that make it easy for you to do network requests from the Redux side of your application. So again, if not Redux-Thunk, it will be something very similar to it. All right, so let's flip back over to our terminal. It looks like everything has installed successfully. So I'm now going to start up my application with npm start. And after a second or two, we should see the application. Okay, it started up, but I already deleted some boilerplate inside the src folder, so you're probably going to see that default loading screen appear right now. So let's flip back over to our code editor. We're going to go ahead and start doing some cleanup inside that src directory. So as usual, I'm going to delete everything inside my src folder, and we're going to replace all that boilerplate automatically generated code with some usual boilerplate that we're going to use inside of just about every React and Redux application that you and I work on. All right, so inside the src folder, I'll begin by creating an index.js file. I'm going to import React from React. I will import React DOM from React-DOM. I'm going to get the provider element from React Redux, and then I'll make sure that I also get create store from the Redux library itself. And then after that, I'll also assume that I'm going to eventually have an app component. We haven't created it just yet, but we will in just a moment. So I will import app from components app. And then I'm also going to assume that we're going to eventually have a couple of reducers inside this application. So I'm going to import reducers from reducers. And then at the bottom, we'll do our React DOM.render call. So I'm going to show my provider tag. I'm going to pass it create store, and when I call create store right here, I'll be sure to pass in all my different reducers. I'll close off the provider tag, and then inside there I'll show my app component, and then finally as the second argument to the React DOM.render call, we'll do the same thing we've always done before. We'll tell React where it needs to render our application. So I'll say document.query selector #root, like so. All right, so just some typical boilerplate that you're going to see in just about every single Redux application. So now at this point, if we flip back over to our browser, we'll very quickly see an error message because we do not have an app file. We also do not have any reducers just yet. So let's very quickly make a kind of default little app component and some default little reducers just to get our application working and appearing on the screen. So inside my src directory, I'll make a new folder called components. inside of components, I'll make my app.js file. And then inside of here, I will import React from React. I'll create my app component as a functional component. And for right now, we'll just have it return a div that has the text app. Now we've seen many times so far throughout this course, as we've been making use of semantic UI, we've always had to come back to this app component and add in that class name of UI container. Remember that class name, when used with semantic UI, gets us the nice margin on the left-hand side and the right-hand side. So we're going to make sure that we just go ahead and apply that class name right now so we don't have to come back and do it later, as we've done throughout this course so far. So on that div, I'll put on a class name of UI container. And then finally at the bottom, I will export default app, like so. All right, so now if we save this, we can flip back over and we're going to see that the error message has now been updated. It now says that it cannot resolve reducers, which means essentially we don't have a reducers directory. We don't have any reducers to make use of whatsoever. Now we've already done a lot of typing inside this video, so let's take a quick pause right here. When we come back to the next section, we'll start creating some reducers for this application just to get our application rendering and working inside the browser.